All right, hey everybody, we're back again. This is I don't remember which installment this is, 6, 7, 8. Anyway, it's chapter 9 in this book that we've been going through, the AP Computer Science 8 Prep book. So if you have this book, follow along, chapter 9. Short one today, this is about array lists. Well, lists and array lists. So you're thinking, what's an array list? Well, it's basically just like an array. Well, if it's like an array, why do we need an array list? Why do we need two of these things in Java? Well, there's some important differences between the two. An array has a fixed size. You have to know how many items you need in the array when you declare it. An array list, you don't. It's dynamic. You can add more later. Can't do that with an array. And an array has a fixed type. It's a bunch of integers or a bunch of booleans or whatever. An array list, you could mix and match. Although we're going to talk about in a minute why it's not a great idea to do that. All right, so what's it look like? Again, I'm going to follow the book. All right. Well, declaring an array list is pretty simple. All right. Now, where have we seen something that looks like that before? Remember when we were talking about classes and objects and all that stuff? And then this is how you make a new object from a class. Array list is a class. So when we make a new array list and assign it to stuff, remember when we were talking about houses and the blueprint was the class? And when we made all the houses, these are all the objects, right? Remember that? Well, same deal, except array list is the class. And here with new, we're making a new one. That's it. All right. Now, we can add and subtract stuff from the array list. One of the big things, though, that is different in an array, if you remember, if we put an array here, int x is equal to, let's say new. Now we'll do it this way. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have 3 of these. All right. Now, if we want, say, this, what do we do? We say x 0, 1. Right? And that gets us the 2. Array lists don't have this handy convenience of the square brackets. Nope. They have a method, just like we had methods on remember we talked about the shape move method we were playing with? Same idea. They have stuff dot get 1. And the 1 is the same thing. It's be the second one in the list. Okay. It's not as convenient. It's kind of ugly looking. I don't know why they don't give it a snazzy shorthand like they have for arrays, but they don't. So that can get a little confusing. But if you see .get there, that's one clue that it's actually a list. Okay. Now, so there's another thing I said about data types. This list here, stuff, can be of any length. You can just keep adding stuff to it, no problem. You can't add more stuff to X here. This is defined and it's got 3 items. That's it. It'll always ever only have 3 items. An array list, you can keep on adding more. Okay. Now the way I've declared it here, there's no data type here, is there? It's not an array list of anything, it's just a list. So you can mix and match all kinds of things in here. You know, like I think in the book they use the example of lunch. You can have an apple, you can have a sandwich, you can have a piece of apple pie, and that's fine. But in computer science, that's generally a bad idea. It's much better to be clear as to the type of everything. Okay, now we can do this with an array list. It's optional, but it's highly recommended. Okay, now here we're going to use our shape class again. Okay, and oh, we have to modify the other side too. Okay, now you see we've added these brackets with a class in them. What's that doing? Well, it's basically saying that stuff is going to be this list of that type. So in this case, shape, from our example in previous videos. So there can only be shapes in this list. If you try to add a banana or something else or a string to this list, the compiler won't be happy with you. You'll get an error. Now, like I said, that's a little picky, and maybe that's a little frustrating when you're writing a program, but this is a much better way to write your code, because it ensures that no one's going to abuse this list and put things in there that don't belong in there. And it tells all the other programmers exactly what you mean and what your intention was. Now, there's an important limitation to this array list that doesn't exist with the array. You can only put objects in the list. You can't put the primitive data types. Remember the primitive data types? You know, int, double, Boolean, things like that. String, interestingly enough, is not a primitive data type. It's an object. So you can have a list of string, an array list of strings. A char, C-H-A-R, a character. You can't have a list of those things. So what Java has done, they provided an interesting little workaround. There are object versions of all the primitive data types. So instead of int x is equal to 5, you can have integer with capital I, y is equal to 5. Okay, and you can have a list, an array list of integer. Right? Now, this is a bit unique to Java. I don't know too many other languages that do things this way. There's also like a double z equals 1, 2, 3, things like that. And if you write, you know, this is what you need. You need these object versions if you want a list of these things. And if you think, well, this is confusing to have a primitive type and an object type of the same thing. Yes, it's absolutely very confusing, and it causes other problems, but it allows you to do this sort of thing. And for your test, that's what you need to know. Okay. I think that might actually, yeah. All right, yeah, let's just go through this little table of comparison here, because that's really what the test wants you to know, the difference between an array and an array list. For an array, once you created it, that's it, you can't size it. Again, you can't change the size. An array list, you can keep adding things, you can dynamically change its size. When you're using an array in your code, you don't have to have any import statement. You don't have to ask the compiler to import a module. It's just there. If you want to use an array list, you have to do this at the top of your class. What is it? Now, why is that? Because remember I said array list is just a class. At this level, it's just a class like shape. It's a library, right? And so to use it, you have to bring it into your code. And you do this with this import statement. You might have seen that in some of the code you've read, and that's what it's doing. So basically what I'm doing with this import is saying, okay, I want to use this, so now that it's been imported here, I can use it down here in my code just like anything else. If you don't do this, it'll say, hey, I don't know what an array list is when you try to compile it to give you an error. Okay, and an array, of course, you can use this notion, remember, with the square brackets? No problem, it's nice, it's easy, convenient. You can't do that with the array list. You have to use, what is it, stuff. My pen is dying. Dot get. You have to use this dot get method. A little less convenient. An array, you can have an array of either primitive types or objects. Doesn't matter, doesn't care. It all has to be the same kind though. You can't have ints and doubles and shapes all in the same array, but you can have an array of any of those things. Okay, an array list without a type can be a list of any object, no primitive types. If you use this preferred type option here, then the array list can only contain the type that you've specified. Okay, that's it. That's the end of arrays. Thank you. We'll see you on the next one.